In a move that sent shockwaves through the global economy, the United States, under the administration of President's name, imposed initial tariffs on a range of Chinese goods. This decision was not made lightly, as it represented a significant shift in U.S. trade policy, aiming to counteract what was perceived as years of unfair trade practices by China. This action marked the beginning of a trade war that has continued to escalate, with far-reaching implications for both nations and the world. The tariffs targeted a wide array of products, from electronics to textiles, affecting industries and consumers alike. The initial tariffs, primarily targeting Chinese imports, were intended to address concerns over unfair trade practices and protect American industries. The U.S. government argued that these measures were necessary to level the playing field and reduce the trade deficit with China. These tariffs, however, were met with immediate retaliation from China, setting the stage for a tit-for-tat exchange that has defined the U.S.-China trade relationship ever since. China responded with its own set of tariffs on American goods, targeting key sectors such as agriculture and automotive. As the world watched, the two economic giants engaged in a high-stakes battle, wielding tariffs as their weapons of choice. The impact of these actions rippled through global supply chains, affecting businesses and economies far beyond the borders of the U.S. and China. The initial salvos of the trade war had been fired, and the global economy braced for the impact. Analysts and policymakers around the world closely monitored the situation, aware that the outcome of this conflict could reshape international trade for years to come. The trade war between the U.S. and China escalated rapidly, starting with initial tariffs that seemed manageable but quickly spiraled out of control. With each side imposing new tariffs in a seemingly endless cycle of retaliation, the economic landscape began to shift dramatically. This escalation created significant uncertainty for businesses and consumers alike, as companies struggled to adapt to the new costs and supply chain disruptions. The cost of goods rose, affecting everything from electronics to everyday household items, and the flow of trade was severely disrupted. The timeline of tariff increases paints a stark picture of the escalating tensions, with each new round of tariffs adding to the economic strain. In February 2025, the U.S. imposed a 10% tariff on a wide range of Chinese goods including electronics, clothing, and machinery. China responded in kind, targeting U.S. imports with retaliatory tariffs on agricultural products, automobiles, and other key exports. This back and forth continued, with tariffs increasing on both sides, leading to higher prices for consumers and increased costs for businesses. By April 2025, the U.S. had imposed tariffs on virtually all Chinese imports, with some goods facing cumulative tariffs exceeding 100%, making them prohibitively expensive. China, in turn, had placed tariffs on nearly all U.S. imports, effectively bringing bilateral trade to a standstill and causing significant economic pain on both sides of the Pacific. The escalating trade war has had a profound impact on U.S. businesses, particularly those reliant on imports from China or exports to the Chinese market. Many businesses have seen their input costs rise significantly, cutting into profit margins and forcing them to raise prices for consumers. The tariffs have also created uncertainty in the market, making it difficult for businesses to plan for the future. Some businesses have attempted to absorb the increased costs, but many have been forced to pass them on to consumers in the form of higher prices. This has contributed to rising inflation, eroding consumer purchasing power. The trade war has also led to disruptions in supply chains, as businesses scramble to find alternative sources for goods previously imported from China. This has resulted in delays, shortages, and increased costs for many businesses. In a move aimed at mitigating the impact on consumers in certain industries, the U.S. government granted exemptions from tariffs for specific tech products. These exemptions, covering items like smartphones, laptops, and computer components, provided some relief for businesses and consumers alike. However, the exemptions were limited in scope and did not address the broader concerns about the ongoing trade war. The exemptions were seen as a positive step by many, but they did not erase the uncertainty surrounding the future of U.S.-China trade relations. The threat of additional tariffs loomed large, and businesses remained cautious about making long-term investment decisions. The exemptions provided a temporary reprieve, but the underlying trade tensions persisted. Section 5. China's counterstrike. Reciprocal tariffs and political maneuvering. China has responded to U.S. tariffs with retaliatory tariffs of its own, targeting key American exports like agricultural products and manufactured goods. These reciprocal tariffs have had a significant impact on American businesses and farmers, who have seen demand for their products decline in the Chinese market. The trade war has become increasingly politicized, with both sides using tariffs as leverage in a broader geopolitical struggle. The trade war has strained relations between the US and China, making it more difficult to address other pressing issues such as climate change, nuclear proliferation, and global health security. The ongoing trade dispute has also fueled uncertainty in the global economy, as businesses around the world grapple with the implications of a protracted trade war between the world's two largest economies. Section 6. Trade Data Speaks, Unveiling the U.S.-China Trade Relationship. Trade data from 2024 reveals the substantial trade relationship between the United States and China, highlighting the significant impact of the ongoing trade war. The U.S. imported $439 billion worth of goods from China, while exporting $143.5 billion, resulting in a $295 billion trade deficit. This imbalance has been a point of contention in the trade dispute. The top U.S. imports from China in 2024 included electrical machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, toys, games, plastics, and furniture. These imports reflect the deep integration of Chinese manufacturing into the U.S. economy. On the other hand, the U.S. primarily exported mineral fuels, oil seeds, electrical machinery, nuclear reactors, boilers, machinery, and aircraft to China. Section 7. Consumer Price Pressures, the Ripple Effect of Tariffs. The ongoing trade war has placed upward pressure on consumer prices as businesses pass on the increased costs of tariffs to consumers. This means that everyday items from groceries to clothing have become more expensive for the average person. The impact is felt across various sectors, making it harder for families to manage their budgets. This has been particularly noticeable in certain sectors, such as consumer electronics, where prices for items like smartphones and laptops have risen significantly. Consumers are now paying more for the same products they used to buy at lower prices, which has led to a decrease in overall consumer spending in these areas. The tariffs have contributed to inflation, eroding consumer purchasing power, and potentially slowing economic growth. As prices rise, the value of money decreases, making it more difficult for consumers to afford the same goods and services they once did. This inflationary pressure can have long-term effects on the economy. The impact of tariffs on consumer prices is complex and varies depending on the specific goods or services in question. Some products have seen dramatic price increases, while others have remained relatively stable. This inconsistency makes it challenging for consumers to predict their expenses. Some businesses have been able to absorb the increased costs, while others have had little choice but to pass them on to consumers. This decision often depends on the size and financial health of the business, as well as the competitive landscape of their industry. The tariffs have also led to a decrease in the variety of goods available to consumers, as businesses face higher costs for importing goods from China. This reduction in variety means that consumers have fewer choices and may have to settle for products that do not fully meet their needs or preferences. Section 8. Adapting to the storm U.S. businesses navigate the trade war. In response to the ongoing trade war, many U.S. businesses have been forced to adapt their operations, seeking to mitigate the impact of tariffs and supply chain disruptions. Some businesses have sought to diversify their supply chains, reducing their reliance on Chinese suppliers. Others have increased domestic production or sought out alternative markets for their products. The trade war has forced businesses to become more agile and adaptable, but it has come at a cost. Adjusting supply chains, increasing domestic production, and finding new markets all require significant investment and can take time to yield results. The trade war has created a challenging environment for U.S. businesses, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises with limited resources.